Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to Obsidian Star, fueled by RPG with DBJ. I'm your host, DBJ, and of course, all of you that are able to participate live during these shows are, excuse me, the co-host of the show. And as we travel down our design journey in designing a rules light tabletop role-playing game, specifically science fiction, I thought I would try to um, express a desire for the game and how it's to be used. I guess it's setting material, and find out like um, how intricate or how generalized that could be, and especially the speculative fiction part of this setting. I'm being very generalized. I'm going to get to the point here, but being very generalized. But I want to say hello to those of you that have stopped by early. Hey there, Shice. Yeah, I'm with you there. Yeah. Speculative fiction. Yeah, yeah. That the comment. Yeah, woohoo! Speculative fiction as adventure mind fuels. The whole reason I got back into RPGs in the first place. Me too. Me too. It's a. It's like it's the ultimate safe space to play with the tools and toys and even shall I say even despicable parts of like imagination, and it's like the safe space to do it. And tabletop role playing games are awesome just to be able to get across those kind of things. I hear you there, Drew. Okay, so let me get a little bit more specific. Um, Again, one of the I want to say problems with us being brilliant individuals is that we often move towards the end of the equation and ignore the work that was done to make the equation in the first place. The classic teacher wants to see your work, not necessarily your answer. And especially with science fiction and speculative science fiction, and I'll define that in a minute, especially with speculative science fiction, we often look at the problem and go, well, yeah, I know what the solution is, and then move on instead of us really delving into the problematic part that happens when moving forward with whatever science fiction or technological advancement has happened. And what I like to see in this, solar system of high technology and futurism is that our players are able to visit many places that are little islands of speculation, little islands of what if, islands of experimentation and strange technologies, or um, technologies we're all familiar with, but some of the volumes the sliders have been moved up on some and reduced on others, and having the players, even if the players from the outside go into a place and they go, man, so someone made a really bad choice in how this society or this civilization is developing. They still have to deal with the issue of, yes, somebody did something pretty despicable, and we still need to navigate in this realm. So I like that. There's a Taste Benos is explaining how we are going to end up getting off this mud ball. That's what I want to hear from Obsidian Star. So um, there is a little bit of a meta knowledge in terms of how humanity got the hell off of Earth and spread throughout the solar system. And um, uh, very shortly, human beings created space elevators and then eventually created a ring around the Earth. They created an orbital ring, and the reason that happened. Thanks. Yeah, the reason that humanity bonded together to make space elevators and an orbital ring around Earth in this setting was that this a once in a lifetime event happened where, despite everyone having different opinions, everyone worked together to achieve one goal. And that goal was to spread across our solar system so that every faction of society could basically be insular and develop mankind the way they thought. So basically, it was a bunch of people who didn't agree with each other, agreeing with each other to do a thing so they could go into space and disagree with each other. Is exactly what happened. So I thought I would talk about. Let me reiterate again that I don't want to presume what society would be like in our great solar system. I'm taking the position that once you get people in bubbles, figuratively and literally, you know, dome cities and bubbles on asteroids and moons and planetary surfaces, and purpose-built habitats orbiting and floating in space and starships and all that kind of stuff, that it becomes really insular, like really, even with modern day technologies we have today, sometimes communities can get very insular about what they do. And I'm picturing a uh, solar system filled with, dozens, hundreds, thousands of these micro communities. And when I say micro, with a trillion plus, um, souls living in the solar system, and I'm using the word souls uh, um, very generalized, that there's no end to the next place that the players may travel to have more adventure in the next place, Now, speculative fiction, in science fiction, we understand that speculative fiction involves most likely using one type of technology, and how would that affect our lives? One of my favorite movies is Gattaca, and it's about genetic modification. A brilliant movie, very very noir, and it deals with a society where they literally said people don't even look at your face anymore. They just want to know what your genetic code is, and those who have particularly, air quotes, perfect genetic codes are of a higher status in society than those who are born, who are nat born, who have genetic defects, essentially, even down to the point where they're predicted to have early death in their lives, and so therefore they are relegated to the lower strata of society. And great movie, the way it's portrayed about people who supposedly are perfect, who have issues, and those who are left behind who achieve greatness and things like that. Tay says we're never going to colonize space. Um, it depends on what your definition of that is. Shitlord says despicable. MTV horrifying youth back in the 90s in order to usher in the current clown world we're living in now. Yeah. Okay, so shitlords, we're going to take a look at some of these social experiments, and most of them are pretty horrible. Pretty damn horrible. Yeah, MTV's not just one of them. Hell, even MTV now is like, oh, are you serious? Taser Bernal says, haven't they distracted us with the internet and its unlimited games and prawn instead of admitting we're never going to colonize space? Yep. Yeah. And Drew says, be prepared to meet many insular places that have become incestuous because how small the group of people are who live there. Yeah. And listen, I'm going to put up a list of these I'm sure there's tens of thousands of these experiments that have happened over time, but when I put up this list, and you guys take a look at some of the things on this list, it just turns your stomach. But this is the fuel that I would like to have in this setting. So it's as Benat has mentioned a few times, this isn't about deciding what it's like. It's about no. This is a lot of people deciding what they think is going to be the best, and there are many people who would take advantage of it. I can't zoom in on these, but anyway, after typing in the top 10 craziest social experiments, I came up with hundreds, and some of these are pretty nasty. Now, right off the bat, like the names of these, and I went through a bunch of these. The names of some of these actually I can actually recall them. Others I'm not as familiar with. But so let's say we start off at the top here with the Stanford Prison Experiment. We have Project MK Ultra, the Aversion Project, the Tuskegee syphilis study. Some of these are like permutations of the exact same experiment, like the Tuskegee syphilis study, the radiation experiments. There's one that was similar to it with malaria, um, and so many of these things. Of course, Nazi human experiments, the Milgram experiment, the Bobo doll experiment here on the to the right. Um, the David Reimer experiment, the Lost in a Mall experiment, the piano stairs experiment. I mean, it goes on and on and on. The bystander effect. My mom, who took a humanities class, was part of. I think it's called the. It was kids. It was either the monster study. Let's see, the monster study. Um, or sometimes maybe that's not it. It's called the blue eye brown eye experiment, and my mom was involved in one of those experiments. I mean, she knew many of these experiments were done on people that had no idea those experiments were being conducted on them. There's even one like the experiment of newborns, um, the lost child experiment. There's there was an ad for an alcohol, and they ran an experiment with bikers in a theater. That's also part of it. I mean, there's so many of these, and so long story short, we know these many of these experiments were done. They had horrific outcomes on people that were not known that these experiments were being done on them. Today, many of us would agree that there are experiments being done on us today. Social media, in many ways, human society itself is one big giant experiment, if you really want to think about it, because we are such a young society of you know human society. But many would say that social media itself is experimenting on us in real time in terms of like dopamine effects and gathering attention, and having an attention um, economy where like likes and subscribes and followers and upvotes and whatever you want to call them become the new economy and how people measure themselves against it. And we see horrific events happening because of this, with things such as like self-mutilation and suicide, and people who do some of the most outrageous things just for social media. And that's just one little thing. So let me get back to our co-host here, and then we'll move on. Shai says, Drew, according to the scientists, you only need a couple dozen people to start an incest-free population. It maybe, I don't know if a couple dozen to take it. I think you might need a lot. I feel like you need a lot more than that because socially, as you start breaking into groups, yeah, it could get a little bit easily devolve into a more incestuous kind of thing with only a couple dozen people. Shai says they say that the peopling of Australia probably only started with a couple boatfuls of settlers 38,000 years ago. Oh yeah. Yeah. Drew says the Stanford prison experiment might be based on flawed methodology, and thus the results there have been not real. Yeah. Thank you there, Drew. Yes, a lot of the experiments, of course, were done like without proper oversight. Some of them were done with an intent to find an answer to a thing that they created the questions to find the answer to. Others were people who meant well, but they just didn't do it the right way. There's a lot of them. Shitlord says nation states with central governments are an experiment. Yep. And so this is a tabletop role-playing channel, and my intention is to and my intention is to instill the idea that um, similar to Dungeons and Dragons and fantasy, of our intrepid travelers and heroes and adventurers traveling from location to location and involving themselves in adventure, the same can be done for science fiction. And in Obsidian Star, we don't leave our own solar system, but there are hundreds of locations, if not thousands or tens of thousands of places where our intrepid heroes, the stars of our encounters can go. And when they open the doors to these locked room bubbles of social incestuousness, and they get in there, and it's like, oh, like maybe we should nuke this place from orbit kind of idea. I think we can have some tabletop role-playing fun. Now, mind you, are there going to be plenty of situations, especially with these experiments, where what we really should do is punch people in the throat? Yes. Yes, lots of that and more. Because some of these experiments, I just shake my head like, didn't you think that, like, what were you thinking when you even thought of this experiment? Like, it took you a while. You had to have sucked down and eaten and digested your own ethics and morality to even do some of these experiments in the first place. But we part of the experimentalism, whatever, of doing these things against other human beings in your own society is that many of these people felt like they were doing it for the greater good. And greater goodness as an excuse in and of itself is a side effect of experimentation, and gives us an easy out to explain any and all horrific things that are done for the sake of science and things like that. Yeah, many of these things were done on people. I mean, just off the top of my head, and I know there's many of these, but I'm just going to pick a few, like the Unit 731 Tuskegee syphilis study, the radiation experiment. There's one for malaria. There's the very, very, very broad Project MK Ultra, where they were in all of these unsuspecting people, and many of them inmates, others outside, were given drugs, bacteria, viruses, injections, things like that, to study the effects of whatever they were studying, whether it's malaria drugs or radiation and stuff. And literally, the radiation experiments were done on people's genitals. That's horrific. Tuskegee, they took, a lot of African Americans are going to, going to college and living in the region in Tuskegee, and they're like, hey, we're going to give you free health care if you just let us do this thing to you. And they're like, I don't know what you're doing. The Guatemala syphilis experiment, a lot of these were done that way. Crazy. There's even the little Albert experiment is horrific, where in the little, and they took a small 9-month-old child, introduced the child to different kinds of stimuli, and then condition the child to be fearful of that stimuli, and it stuck with that child up until they became an adult. There are many experiments about violence. The Bobo doll experiment involved violence. So the Bobo doll is like it's a weighted doll where the bottom of it is heavier than all the weight is down at the bottom mass, so it can't fall over. And children were introduced to the doll alongside adults, and the adults that were kind to the doll, the children were kind to it as well. The adults that were violent to the doll, punching and kicking it and trying to knock it down, the children followed the same behaviors, and then the children exhibited those same behaviors against basically other children. It's pretty nasty, right? Conditioning people to be violent and stuff like that. A lot of these are conditional experiments, like Lost in the Mall experiment, the false witness experiments. The experiment I'm going to explain that my mom was part of, basically it's like it's attention experiments. Did you notice a thing? And then they have other individuals around you, like actors and such, doing different things to change your perceptions of what you think is going on versus everything else around you. So, for example, there's an experiment where one person was brought into the room with a bunch of other actors. They were shown very common sense images, and all the people would pick the wrong answer. And then the experiment was done on the individual. Do they go along with the crowd and also pick the wrong answer, or do they stand out of the crowd and pick the correct answer? Right? They were shown like all short sticks and a tall stick, and they were asked which one's the tallest. and all the actors would pick the shorter sticks, saying they were the tallest, and then they would go to the person being experimented on and like, which is the tall stick? And then they would look around and go, I'm going to go with the crowd and pick the shorter stick. There's the what is the bystander effect, where we often think that if we're in a large crowd, that we are safer in a large crowd than if we are by ourselves. But we know that an individual that is harmed or seems sick or something like that in a large crowd, everyone else in the crowd thinks somebody else will do something. Therefore, everyone is like a bystander, not doing anything, even though everyone's witnessing the thing that happens. What's another one? The Milgram experiment is the one where following authority. So an authority figure tells you to shock a person being asked questions, and every time they get an answer wrong, you are supposed to shock them. And they found out that people, despite the fact that they were shocking someone who was begging not to be shocked over and over again, that people would continue to do it if an authority figure told them to do a thing. And now, as horrific as many of these are, there are like technological tabletop role-playing technological ways that we can introduce a lot of these things into our games, meaning like when the players go from habitat to habitat, they travel across time and space in our own solar system. When they arrive in a place, it might seem very nice, or it may seem very utopian in many ways, and then come to find out that, oh no, there's something dark in the background. And I think part of that in the game could be pretty amazing. You guys are so crazy. Yeah, Drew says, yeah, I don't like those social gaslight experiments. We all know that people can be gaslit. And the problem with those gaslighting experiments is that, when I say problem with them, is that I think sometimes they are overlooking the natural inclination for human beings to be safe. And sometimes the more bizarre the behavior we see around us, the greater chance we are going to blend in, because we know we want to be safe. When we see craziness, it's not a good idea to raise your hand and stand up when you're surrounded by craziness and go, hey, I'm the outsider, because we know in real life that, sure, is craziness sometimes just simple behaviors and it's just cute? Yes, but we also know that sometimes, especially here, like in the States, sometimes that craziness can get pretty violent. Yeah, yeah, I'm a optimism bias. Yeah, so yeah, there's a lot of times where people will go along with the crowd just to get the fuck out the crowd, so we can go back with our normal lives, right? It's the East Coast New York City subway riding, behaviors, where we get on public transit. I don't live in the East Coast anymore, but I remember living there, born and raised. And when you get on public transportation, everybody is in their own bubble. Why? Because your goal is to get through this horrific experience and get the hell off the subway or train or bus or subway surface car or the L or whatever the case may be, regional rail line. Get off and go to hell about your life. And when you woke up that morning, you weren't thinking, am I going to have to literally fight for my life right now? Because a lot of times, like with like homelessness and mental people who have severe mental deficiencies and things, walking around, highly populated urban centers, you don't know if that person's got like a box cutter or a gun or a knife, or wants to eat the flesh off your face or something. I mean, they could very well be very very normalized and very innocent, but like, what percentage would be the percentage you'd feel comfortable in a high population region bumping up against somebody who's got some crazy thoughts and you don't know if they're going to be violent? 3%, 12%, half a percent? Like, what's your percentage of risk rate per day? Yeah, I don't know. Stanford Prison. You mean the school George Bush went to? Oh no. Taste of Us is there must have been a whole lot of social experiments in the backstory that sets up Obsidian Star and going forward, right? Like the idea that humanity builds space elevators to very cheaply and in large populations go out into the stars is because we are all the heroes of our own story and the villains in everyone else's. And even today, humanity is always look up. It's why cults are so popular, because cults give us a insular social dynamic that makes people comfortable in their own beliefs outside of and sections us away from other problematic what we would consider other problematic living conditions and things. It's why here in the States we have such a huge near somewhat leading to violence against like blue and red states and blue and red cities and counties and things like that, because um everyone thinks they're the hero of their own story, whether you fall blue or red. And then um in addition to that, it's the us versus them, to the point of people becoming lone gunmen and having violence against those other people, even though it's really just circumstance where you live and the social media that you absorb, right? We all know that social media silos us into things that when you delve into social media, you're only shown the things that are hitting your dopamine levels, that so you're never going to be shown, or you very rarely are going to be shown things that contradict your own beliefs. And so, yeah, we get very siloed and stuff. Deadman says nation states with a non-centralized government are not an experiment, as it's impossible to create a non-centralized government with more than 200 people. Yes, because like Deadman, you are absolutely correct there, Deadman, because once you get beyond, what is it, like 150, 200 people, the number varies a little bit, but it generally is between 100 to about 200. Human beings, we will start creating what we perceive as functional governmental systems to accommodate the population level. Otherwise, below that, like 150, 100 level, it's pretty socialist slash anarchy. It usually operates like that, right? Yeah. Mm-mm-mm. It is absolutely essential that you continue to hit the ball shocker button. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Oh man. It's funny because I know about like I'm conscious of bias in reality. And so like there are times we'll go to the supermarket or like drive to a place to park, whatever, and you'll see like 5 open lanes, but everyone's in one single lane. And I'm like, there's a green light over there. And I start turning over to my wife's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, path of least resistance. Like I'm not sheep. I'm going over there. and and it can be a little jarring, but like I'm a very conscious of not being part of the sheep, and I actively like will point out sheep type behavior and stuff. It's pretty weird, but yeah. Never mind, people may just let you get hurt and record it for online clout and not care about stopping it. Ooh, yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that part too, about the bystander effect. Like some people just want to turn. It's at the point where people reaction is to turn their phone on before they start helping. It's like, oh, I'm going to record this so I can get some online clout. Yep. Yep. Marco, hey, what's up there? Says not entirely correct. The experiment showed that an authority figure wasn't enough to make the person shock them. Hey, Marco, have you been here before? And it depended on what the authorities said. If they said that it was for a greater good, they were far more likely to continue. Just giving orders made people rebel more. And I think you're very um the idea of the greater goodness of a thing. Like, hey, if you give me an excuse, I can do these horrific things. Yeah, yeah, there, Marco. Yep, yep. And this being a tabletop role playing channel, having players go to habitats that are on Mars or many of the moons around Saturn and Jupiter and all these places and empty starships and all the um the dozens, hundreds, thousands of space habitats, when they arrive, their social interactions with people may uncover um, behaviors caused by the continued social experimentation, knowingly or unknowingly, caused by the people who live there. Like it could just be an accident that people start behaving in these odd manners, or it could just be real. I mean, Star Trek and what's the other show? The Orville really embraced that idea. You know, Star Trek is, hey, the Federation is utopia. We're going to go out in space and bump up against these other people that haven't figured out what society is like. And of course, it's a reflection back on us. But when they go out there and they find out, like, you know, they have these horrific social norms. I would love for this game to incorporate those things, and you know, not just the experiments that were done here on Earth, but basically twisted and formed with like a little bit more high technology. Like, for example, when you start incorporating the idea of the zippers and jackets, the cortical stacks, and the bodies that you can have your neural pathways implanted inside of, being able to have virtual realities and things of that nature can really like ramp up the craziness and the bizarreness of it. Thomas says, yeah, most concepts are based on fascistic systems of corporations, governments, partnership, using violence-driven coercion to get big projects done. I agree with that too. Taste of Banana says they must have done a lot of tests on making hundreds of people live together in confined spaces for dozens of years. That's another thing that I want to embrace in this game instead of ignoring it. That yeah, even player characters confined in a small tin cans for days, months, weeks, on end, can drive a person a little bit crazy. And so there's a need to like listen, I love you guys, but we need to get to this new habitat and get off this starship because we're driving each other crazy. And then they get off in that habitat and everyone looks around and goes, I think they're a little crazier than we are. And then, you get into that situation as well. So yeah, there may be a need for players to arrive in a place, and instead of just arriving and then leaving, they might have to stay for a while to alleviate the pressures that are on their own heads in their own little half dozen social experiment goo, to go into another place that's maybe got 10,000 people living there and they've got their own issues. So yeah, Taste, that's why there's such work done to try to find the astronauts, taikonauts, cosmonauts that go into space and make sure that they are psychologically stable. Thomas Anderson says, instead of going the route of elders concept, okay, where people follow the old gray-haired people and listen to them because they must have some level of wisdom to survive until they have gray hair. That and cult personalities. Hey, don't make fun of me. I'm a gray hair. I'm an old gray beard. If I didn't have a headband on, you'd see all like all my locks are like gray up until like the halfway point, and then there's gray down in here. You can't really see it on the screen, but yeah, I'm no gray hair. Cults of personality, yeah, big deals. Yep. Social media are really annoying with the tendencies to create an isolating echo chamber around people. For xenophiles like me, it requires constant work to expand my horizons. Yep. For me too, because sometimes there's things I've actually had to work against my own algorithms to find out information that's not falling into my own silo. And that's super annoying because like I listen to a lot of podcasts and people's videos on YouTube. I listen to it and it might put me into a cycle where it goes back to old things. I'm like, I don't want to listen to this. I want to listen to something else. It's really weird. Being a polygot is difficult with social media. If you're someone who's like, they're talking about, I don't know, pottery, or they're talking about the manufacture of sneakers, or they're talking about new discoveries from the I don't know, the new JW whatever satellite or something like that, and when me going back and forth, my algorithms hates it. TA says you also have insane people in power that are taking us backwards, punishing those who help. So no one wants to help now and wants to just say, I saw nothing. And that makes that issue even worse if you live in a space habitat. Imagine living in a place that has a bounded, um, specifically has bounded walls, right? Like we live, us living on Earth, of course, we can't leave Earth, but we can move from city to city, town to town, even community to community. And we know we have the freedom in some ways to move from those places, especially those of us in these first world countries. If you live in a space habitat, there's very few places for you to move to get away from the problematic issues of those around you. You like, right? You'd have to literally get in a starship and move to another habitat of which you may not have fully developed knowledge about to leave the old place behind. And so the I don't see anything, the I'm going to go along to get along idea would probably be very pervasive in a space habitat. You know what I mean? Yeah, never mind that DA and mayor that are clearly corrupt. And if you listen to them, I honestly think they don't have the self-awareness to realize they were when they committed the act. So now they are just squirming as they are having their noses rubbed in all their corruption and criminal acts done in the period of their government appointed offices. Yeah, yeah. Listen, we can convince ourselves of so many things. Tay says Star Trek was a psyop to condition us to embrace communism. I don't know about that. Well, maybe, we see there's lots of videos saying that there's no way for the Federation to exist as is. And I'm like, yep, that's on purpose. It's not supposed to. Ah, that's great. DBJ just ruined Star Trek for me. Now it feels like the typical white savior nonsense. A little bit of that. Yeah. Hey, it is February here in the States and it's Black History Month. So yeah, white savior messaging in a lot of movies was a big deal. Simply because there wasn't, especially through large parts of not social media, media, movies and television shows and things like that, books and stuff like that. It was, especially during my era, 70s, 80s, 90s, it was like, it was too much of it. Yeah, the algorithmic bubble is part of the Facebook playbook. They have narrowed down our viewerships in an effort to make us pay for reach. Yep, that's exactly right. Yep, the inshitification of social media platforms. Never bought into the concepts behind Star Trek, and it should have been shown the background of more nefarious things and such that are out of sight. That is part of why I said that my replicator level tech is not going to bring some Marxist utopia, but rather will abolish the dependence on corporate structure and move to a true capitalism. Well, I think the point is you're not supposed, it is the utopia of Star Trek, Star Trek's Federation is not supposed to be realistic. It is supposed to give us a window into looking at other alien things. It's speculative fiction, right? It's a storytelling mechanism for us to go, no. We're the good guys. We're looking at everybody else that's the problem. And then we're able to look at ourselves as the problem by making it. It's very much like Outer Limits and Twilight Zone. That's what it's about. It's not about the Federation being realistic at all. It's about what does our human condition look like up against an unrealistic utopia? Can we ever reach it if we ever solve our real world problems? And those real world problems are shown as aliens. It's that kind of thing. Like the ironic hilariousness of I'm going to butcher this. The Star Trek episode where the aliens were half black, half white, and they hated each other because their half black and half white side was different than the other half black, half white side. damn it. There we go. Let's get this image up here. Images. There we go. So, I mean, this is a perfect example of the like the speculative fiction part of the Star Trek and such, about how, like, if you take a look at the two aliens, they're like, we hate each other because you're different than us, and it was a mirror into ourselves, right? Like, we look at this and go, that's fucking ridiculous, but they look at it like, no, I mean, this is murderous, it's necessary, right? And that's the whole point. That's the point of Star Trek. It wasn't to make the Federation real. It was Kirk going like, you do realize you guys are like, this is some like bullshit. And then we look at our real lives and go, yeah, it's when we hate each other, it's kind of bullshit just based on some kind of random outward appearance thing, right? James Webb Space Telescope, J Dub, JWST, I've heard it. I've heard the acronym pronounced different ways, and I'm trying to remember the different ways I've heard the James Webb Space Telescope pronounced with its acronym. Yeah, I can't remember. We should advertise on MeWe too. It is the only alt tech platform where I have seen anybody get any traction at all. Yeah, well, yeah. I don't know about that. It will make it possible to have a more Marxist approach to ideas and technology. Cheaper to get help gathering while more rare material. Okay, I hear you there, TA. I don't know. Somebody's going to control access to replicator technology, so I don't know. You can always move to the inner space of the mind. Yeah. Listen, there are many times where I've gotten advice for myself and realized myself is giving myself some bullshit advice. So I don't know if you want to move to the inner space of your mind. There might be people living there that you don't want to be there with. T says, I imagine exchange for raw materials like raw carbon versus gold metal, where the raw material is all that you see in value, and combining them into a construct like a cell phone won't raise the price. Ooh, yeah. With replicating things together. Yep. Like how iPhones are about $3 to $5 worth of material, but in that shape, the material can be sold for $1,000. Yeah. Pure capitalism, right? You move that raw material into a object that everyone needs or wants, or you create artificial scarcity for a thing. FOMO, creating a fear of missing out. That's also a thing too. But that is because you can't just print an iPhone at home with the replicator level tech. You will now be able to, and buying it pre-printed will be just time related and not restricted capability. I like that idea too, that you could just go out and you could print it at home, and it's like a person building a birdhouse at home or going out and buying one, right? The materials still exist, and there's nothing stopping you from building your own birdhouse. It's just the time and energy and resources involved in doing it. Here, Taste Banat says, Star Trek's vision of a glorious future through cooperation is similar to the Marxist mythology they taught us in school. Now, listen, I haven't grown up where you've grown up with, so I can't make I don't have an opinion about it because I can't make an opinion about it because I haven't learned from it. But this is a perfect example there, Taste of Banat, of having both of us living in different conditions, and the historic value of how you've grown up is different than mine, and very much me coming to visit you and how you've grown up and where you live would be like me taking a starship through space to go to, I don't know, a moon on orbiting Jupiter and visiting you, except it would be much, a little bit more difficult. But when I get there, I can't just leave. I'm going to have to figure out how to navigate your world and vice versa, right? And I think that's the amazing part, because part of it is like learning plenty of new things. The other part is learning some pretty horrible things and going, I need to get the hell out of here, but I can't start beating against the, the, I don't know, the clear dome to get myself out of here because everyone's going to think that I don't like them, but I don't like them, but I don't want them to know that. In celebration of, why don't you reserve one day to talk all about the, don't know what that means. Don't know where you're going with that shit, lords. I did 2 weeks of Black History Month and talking about the legacy of Africans and African Americans in the United States, the diaspora, and relating it into today's so-called, I don't know why, negative wokeism in tabletop role-playing games and what that means. So I already have a playlist involving all of that kind of stuff. I'm not going to go over it again. Oh, okay. It says the out of sight nefarious stuff in Star Trek is that they basically had to enslave all of humanity to become a spacefaring civilization. Is that part of the history of Star Trek? I don't, or are you inferring that? Because I do know that they had like Khan, the ban on genetically modified human beings was one of the something that happened in the history of the Federation. I think there's some other things in there. I don't know it. Like, I don't know, have any details about it. I'm not a Trekkie. Like, I'm not that deep into it, but yeah. I didn't know if they literally enslaved people or, well, what is your definition of in like psychological enslavement, right? Is it everyone working together for one thing? That's not necessarily a bad thing. Everyone's saying, hey, let's build a bridge, or let's build an aqueduct. Let's dig a well for clean water. Is that enslaving everybody because everybody benefits from the same thing? I don't know. You could make I could see people making the argument. Let me put it that way. Shitlord says, DBJ, you have a character class with a name that is an epithet we shouldn't say in Germany. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes. I'm considering changing it, but yes, you are correct, because Shy Squad even mentioned the fact that it is considered an epithet, but in defense of using it, and it doesn't mean that I'm like, I'll never change it. It is a term of collective endearment amongst people who have gathered for themselves an independence and a sense of identity separate from everybody else. It's kind of like it's unfortunate, but it's kind of like the N-word here in the States. Taste of Banat says, Eastern Europe is not that different, just crazy languages and the legacy of communism messing everything up. Yeah. Well, and I would argue with you there, Taste. Listen, it wouldn't be a hill I would die on. I would argue that our definitions of certain types of governments aren't the actual governments we were living under. That the written definition of communism isn't the communism that happened. It's actually probably something different. Like I said, we are a representative democracy, but we're here in the States, but we're really a combination of like a kleptocracy, meritocracy, oligarchy. Like it's kind of a soup more than a direct, direct government kind of thing. So I would argue with you a little bit about that. Same outcome. I'm not going to argue with the outcome, but I would argue with you about like what type of government was it? Yeah. Just like people who argue about like socialism's terrible, and I'm like, what you're thinking of and what the true definition are probably two separate things. Shitlord says, no, you should actually definitely keep the K name. I just don't want to type it. Oh, yes, you are absolutely correct. I apologize. I finally got it because I'm live. My brain's going everywhere. Yes, yeah. That was my point in introducing it. That from other people's point of view, like you're saying, like in Germany, it's considered something pretty horrific, right? It's a curse word, right? But in this science fiction setting, it's like, nah, this is like a term of endearment, like, yo, I'm a blank, like you're blank, and we're together, and we're badasses going through space, kind of thing. Yeah, Shai says, yeah, DBJ, Obsidian Star is a perfect opportunity to reclaim the K word and the people who it's been identified with, right? That's my point. Like, that word came from, as an example, that came from individuals that were, a negative connotation was assigned to it because we're human beings and we like assigning negative connotations to things. So like we can like, so, equality isn't a standard. It's like we try to raise above and below and to do that. So yes, that is one of the reasons why I wanted to incorporate that. TA says the trick with government is transparency, so people can see any corruption and then have it to honestly wish to have it if they allow it, instead of having it because they were lied and didn't know. Yeah, transparent governmency is very difficult because a perfect example is here in the States we have Social Security, and Social Security was designed to be a big bucket of money that everyone puts a little bit of money in, and then when people get elderly, they get old and they leave the workforce, they can then dip into that bucket of money and live on, and then we all benefit from it. But what literally happened was big bucket of money. Everyone puts a little bit of money in it, and then all the politicians looked in, and their eyes went cha-ching, and did the classic cartoon dollar signs in the eyes, and they all started reaching into that bucket of money, and then writing out IOU slips. And then as each political generation goes on, the next politician comes in and goes, "This is a huge problem. I'm gonna kick this problem down the road and let somebody else solve it." So yeah. So like that's a perfect example of like the definition of a thing isn't the how the thing is done. It is pretty horrible. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, Taste of Banana says, yes, that wasn't real communism. Socialism and communism, as defined by Marx, are just too fanciful for reality. Exactly. Much like Star Trek. Yes. Yeah. See, and you see how we come in a big circle. And I maybe that's my fault for doing that to you, dude. But yeah, it's that big circle of like, yeah, it's a little too what you're thinking of is a little too fanciful. We're not going to get there. And there are many people who are like big and bold, like in the sci-fi setting, right? Who are individuals who know how to manipulate people to, to achieve a goal. And as they reach for that goal, take advantage of them as they reach for that goal. If I can give you a visual, it's the person who says, we need to change the light bulb. I'm going to go get a ladder and we can all climb up the ladder. I put the ladder down. Everyone's happy. They start climbing up the ladder to go change the light bulb. And I start picking their pockets as they go up the ladder, right? I came with a great idea. Let's change the light bulb. Everyone's happy. They, let's work together to go change this light bulb. And then instead of me holding the ladder and helping everybody, I start picking their pockets as they go up the ladder. And that's usually what's happening with government, right? It's like, here's this great idea. Here's this person with a great idea. They get there and they go, "Ooh, you climbed up the ladder. Look at that fat wallet. Maybe I should take that," you know? Drew's like, replace government with game mastering. Yep. Hey, maybe we should make laws like tabletop role-playing books. Yeah, grab the role-playing book and like, hey, here's the laws. Let me open this up and show you on page 67. It says, you know, oh man. Shai says, I heard that Marx claimed that there were no hierarchies in prehistoric caveman societies. Hence, the state falling away would be like returning to the way mankind was naturally meant to live. Yeah, people, listen, charismatic people have a way of twisting things around, right? Like, you can't tell me there were no levels in caveman society. Some people were hunters, some were gatherers, some had skills to create shelters, some had the ability to create fire. Like I'm sure there were some. I don't know that for a fact, but yeah. All right, so tying this up. Okay, let's get these social experiments back up here. Um, the idea of using of adventures based on social experiments, as I try to curve us back into our own own talks about tabletop role playing games, is the idea that many of these social experiments were pretty damn horrific. But listen, role playing games, our heroes are supposed to go up against the bad guys, right? Which means we have to have bad guys doing bad and terrible things. So I'm not purporting that those social experiments are good. I'm saying in a sci-fi setting, in comparing it to fantasy, where we have dragons and nagas and manticores and harpies and all kinds of like orcs and things like that, lizard folk living out in the wild, and we confront them with sword and spell, um, to protect the landscapes and going into these deep dark dungeons. I'm purporting that we use the same technique for storytelling in science fiction, that our heroes arrive in space habitats and domed cities and hive, zero gravity hive places orbiting in a Lagrange point or somewhere. And we use this in our own solar system, and to allow us the freedom to come up with places. Maybe players arrive there for extremely short time. Maybe they come to a place where humanity has broken down so much that they're like roaming bands of banditry, cannibalizing each other, figuratively and or literally, in a space habitat, or a space habitat that seems to be utopian until the players discover that there's a dark secret to how they achieve this utopia, and so on and so forth, and allow us to, do these as one-offs, one-shots, a corner of our solar system that maybe we don't want to visit again. Maybe the players do find out, you know what, we're not, I literally can't scrub it out my mind's eye. Let's nuke this place from orbit, kind of a thing. So yeah. Juice is not entirely, though. Hunter-gatherer communities are rather flat. I would say that, yeah, I agree. Like a family, until you start getting towards that like 200 people population, then you're going to have to start giving out like jobs and organization and things like that. But when you have family arrangements, what is a family arrangement? Like, it's kind of a anarchy slash socialism slash, I don't know. There's a couple of meritocracy, right? It's a little bit of a combination of a flow of that kind of soup, where family is just like, listen, you wash the dishes, you take out the trash. I'm going to get food to, cook dinner, that kind of stuff. Taste of Banana says, in Obsidian Star, there is no overarching society or civilization, right? Correct. Humanity is totally fractured from living apart all over the solar system, right? Yes. Now, I don't want to make this black or white. So there will be an example is the Jovian system, Jupiter itself. The overarching conditions around Jupiter are it is a criminalized governmental system. Now, there are different factions within that, but many people who are scientists that want to experiment, illegal experiments, criminals, have moved to the Jovian system for overall protection. But within that, there's different little aspects, right? So no, there is no one overarching. There's no hegemony. There's no what's another word for hegemony? There's no empire. There's no imperialism. There's no feudalism that overrides the entire solar system. Not at all. It's fractured. And now, are there factions that want to organize as an empire or a hegemony or an organized crime? Or, of course, there are overriding religions or technocracies and things like that spreading amongst the stars. Yes, of course. Our solar system, of course. And those overarching factions want to take humanity out beyond the Oort cloud. And that's where the idea of orbits come in, that there's this ticking timer, this orbit, that this these factions are moving behind the scenes, and if the players do nothing, let me make up a name. The Black Saber Imperium. I need to come up with a name. So the Black Saber Imperium. I keep using the Black Sabers. I don't know why. I think it's because because I imagine a banner with a black sword with like a planet behind it or like a lightning bolt or something. So anyway, the Black Saber Imperium wants to expand across our solar system. And if the players ignore it, that might spread in your game. That faction may be spreading from the moon. Now they've got the moon under their control. Now they're going to Saturn or Mars, and there's a rebel faction that lives on Deimos or Phoebos, the moon, but Mars is starting to fall under the Imperium as well. That might be in your game. Whereas another game, it might be, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation may be doing the exact thing, going from the moon to the Mars. There's a rebel faction that lives on Phoebos on the moon, and then the players are doing nothing. But this Weyland-Yutani, I know it's taken from the Alien franchise, but that's my point. Like, it could be a corporate entity, it could be an oligarch family that's taking over one place at a time. So yes, so Tay says, okay, so there are multiple societies, sub-societies, factions, syndicates, etc. Exactly. No outrageously implausible one federation of mankind. No. Now, I'm going to take something you actually said, which is, are there people who believe in a fictionalized, like Marxism? Are there people, industries, syndicates that believe in a fictional, utopian way of life that other people are falling under, even though as an outsider, as the players, as the stars of the story, that you're like, this will never happen. It'll destroy itself under its own weight. Of course. And that's kind of it is strange to have the knowledge that a gaining thought process like today in our own world is gaining traction, even though from the outside we know that it would destroy itself under its own weight, and people are still going under it. That is the ethical and moral quandary sitting on the shoulders of our heroes. Do they do something about it? Do they run away from it? Will it catch up to them in their adventures? Is this something that you want to introduce in a game that's building in the background while they hop from place to place to place with these unattached storylines, and then come to find out there is one big storyline overriding it, that there is a big bad that's coming behind the heroes, moving as a wave. So, and I want to make that something you guys use, not me. I don't want it to be my idea. I want to play in your game and you tell me what's happening, you know. Yeah, Drew says Chieftain Graves is already a thing that is based on sedentary peoples, thus not actually hunter-gatherer anymore. Right. Oh yeah, and Drew, moving from like nomadic societies to sedentary societies and things like that, and how it shifts into those categories. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Shai says they almost certainly had chieftains, and archaeological evidence implies that some cavemen had better goodies than others. Yeah. Most of the hierarchical thinking comes from the patriarchal pastorals people. I think there's some, I don't want to say rare, but I think we're discovering communities that were driven by like were matriarchal in their dissemination and things. I mean, okay, let's pick some. We're getting late here. Let's pick some real world things. Imagine two separate habitats, one patriarchal, one matriarchal. I'm not going to tell you what those habitats look like on the inside. I'm not going to tell you how they are evolving. I can see both a utopian and a dystopian community in both of them, and I could see the utopia going to a dystopia and a dystopia going to a utopia based on the X factor, which might be our player characters or their involvement, right? Let's not get to the end of the equation. Let's make the adventure the work that's done to get to that equation. So for example, you may have a patriarchal or matriarchal habitat and it could be crumbling under its own rules, right? You know, the Amazons versus the, I don't know, the patriarchy versus the matriarchy. They could literally be going at each other physically. They could be recruiting from each other's side. There could be, in the PCs may need to rescue people who want to go from one hab to the other. They may have spies that go from one to the other to try to disrupt what the other is doing because they don't want the other side to be a utopia. I mean, those are all, and that's just me. That's me pulling, bullshit out of my ass, right? So, mm-mm. Yeah. How do you know that the richer graves are based on power? Maybe the people who had a full life and got old and wise had more in their graves. Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Yeah, it could be. Maybe those bigger graves were made because of all the greatness that was, because of all the wealth that tribe or whatever had, and they put it into the grave. Maybe it wasn't a chieftain. Maybe it was a person that was well respected. And much like today, when someone maybe has a funeral and people bring gifts and things like that, maybe it comes from the outside. We don't know. Yeah, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence where the septic tank is located. You need a t-shirt on that. I like that. I love that analogy too. That's awesome. Yeah, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence where the septic tank is located. And that, listen, that comment is entirely makes up what I'm the thank you for organizing my thoughts in the sense of, like, yeah, maybe this is a thing where the players arrive in a place that's beautiful and perfect and they are embraced with open arms, and the players are like, I smell something, it's weird. Yeah. Or where the airline poo fell to earth. Mommy, that plane dropped something from the sky and I tasted it and it's not chocolate. Yeah, good point. Aren't people in Obsidian Star mighty disappointed that there aren't any aliens? Uh, yes and no, because one of the truths is that we become our own aliens. That some people have separated themselves from everybody else to the point where we are we are effectively, by definition of aliens, alien to each other. We've modified our brains. We've modified our bodies. We have new social structures. We've lived apart for so long. Genetically, we aren't even compatible any longer. Um, we have bacterium and viral things flowing through our bodies with nanotech and all these things put together, that two habitats can be separated not just by space and time, but literally by separated by divergent evolution or chosen evolution, to the point where even natural born humans maybe can't even relate or breed with or understand the languages of other human being, air quotes, humanity out amongst the stars and stuff. So yeah, that is the idea of Obsidian Star, that we can get as alien as we want, but those aliens are us under different circumstances. You know, if you live on Mars and you've modified your lungs and your skin for the cold air and the carbon dioxide atmosphere and breathing it in, are you still human? Kind of, yeah. But then you start going out further when you've been adapted to zero gravity and high radiation and living, um, modifying your brain to live in isolation for days, weeks, months, years on end, and things like that. Ooh, you guys, damn, got to give you guys a slow clap. No alien nations, just alienation. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Slow class on that. Damn it. You awesome. I love it. Yes, that's exactly right. No alien nations, just alienation. Yeah, heck, if you stay still and everyone's moving away from you, um, does that mean you're wrong and they're right, or are they wrong? And it's the whole, yeah, it's the whole thing. Um, to the point where I kind of want natural born human beings to feel like outsiders. And, not just cyberpunk. I've got a cybernetic arm and eye. I'm talking like people speaking in different frequencies, um, humanity having different types of being able to see into the ultraviolet and infrared spectrum and things where people communicating in high frequency or low frequency sounds and light and pheromones and whatnot, to the point where when you can start stacking all of these changes, maybe you're not really human anymore. Um, Shitlord says, okay, but the modified future people aren't like monsters or anything, just weird. Yes, it's all point of view. It'll be all point of view. Now, listen, will some of these people kind of need to be nuked from orbit? Yes, of course. Um, the mystery of humanity that left our solar system to head out to the Oort cloud. So the Oort cloud itself is my meta barrier to what is alien and what is human. So the people that went out to the Oort cloud have changed so much. Many of them represent what we would consider in tabletop role-playing game monsters. So let me give you some examples. I'm still working on some examples. So, okay, one example of humanity has been able to modify themselves so their brains and their spinal cords can exit their bodies, so that their bodies operate like animalistic and their brains are higher function, and they can kind of like open up their brains like the egg sacs in Aliens, and their brains can like kind of crawl out like with spider like legs and things like that and whatever. So that's just an example of like people that have modified themselves out in the Oort cloud that have alienified their bodies and minds to come back into the solar system. Yeah, now there's a line that's getting cannibalized for song lyrics. Yeah, no alien nations, just alienation. Yeah, I love that. I love that because, um, many of us feel like we are, we can feel like we're alienated in our own skin. We can feel like we're alienated amongst our what we consider to be our compatriots, like people who are our same age and social status and things like that. Many of us look for social validation because we feel alienated because of maybe the thoughts in our head. And then there comes the issue of like, maybe some of the thoughts in our head, maybe we shouldn't be delving into those thoughts. Maybe we should be amongst people that we don't get along with easily, to teach us things about how to get along with people we don't agree with, right? um that kind of stuff. So yes, I thank you very much, Drew. I love it. Yeah, no alienations, just alienation. Yeah, yeah, and actually maybe more alienations than a little bit, right? Like, as the players go from habitat to habitat, maybe they are looking for a home in your game. Maybe your players are like refugees. They are looking for a place to call home, or they're like Ronin. They are looking to serve a people to make a home with, like samurai or knights or Templar or something like that. They are masterless, and they're looking to serve a place that is a great place for refugees like themselves to arrive. And or maybe the players are the opposite. Maybe they're colonists. Maybe the players want to establish a home base with other people living there because they visited so many alienating places that they're like, no, we're going to make our own alien nation or something, right? So that's a possibility as well. And I want all those possibilities to be open so you can kind of like navigate with you and your players, whether it is making your game a reflection of the world you see around you, or whether it's like, hey, I love this science fiction setting. I love this world building. I love this television show I saw or this book series that I read, and I'd love to play in that world. Let's insert it into the science fiction setting as a background. Um, and each habitat, like a West Marches game, like a fantasy game, could be its own dungeon. It could be its own. And simply by how habitats are designed, they kind of are their own little dungeon settings, their own little city states, their own little. especially if they're separated like a one dome. You could have thousands of domed cities on the surface of Mars, and none of them have to have interactions with each other. We kind of forget how big some of these moons and planetary surfaces are, and how much space has to allow us to put 1,000 space habitats filled with 1 million people each, and it still wouldn't fill a pinprick, right? So anyway, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. I have to go take a bio break. It's really hitting me here. So guys, have a great one. I will see thee later. Peace and tranquility.